welcome to the Taste Talks. We are having our Wine Wednesday on Thursday this week, so thank you for being flexible with us. But we are excited to have Mary Ross with us today, who will be presenting a topic that we've talked about many times. We've had to postpone it a couple of times, and I know everyone's eager and anxious to finally get to hear her talk about wine crimes. Yes, it's finally the day when Mary is going to tell us about some of the scandals that have occurred in the wine industry. I'm very excited for this one. I know you are too. So I am going to go ahead and let Mary take it away.
Thank you, Christine, and thanks to all of you. I see some wonderful friendly faces and familiar faces, and I think I see a couple of new faces, so thank you for joining us. We tend to think of the wine as the merry vineyard workers singing their happy song. The fact of the matter is, wine is a big business. And when you have power, there's always going to be the chance for wrongdoing and malfeasance. Now, we're going to be talking about three issues, very current issues. As a matter of fact, two of the issues are coming out in the wine trades daily. In fact, I just posted a Facebook response to one of these issues just a few minutes ago. So these are current topics. And they will influence what you are drinking now, and probably what and how you will be drinking in the future. Okay. We're going to start with a segment that I call, do you know what's in the wine that you drink? Well, I do. So, the idea of wine additives is nothing new. It was a very traditional practice, for instance, in France. If the vintage weren't sturdy enough to ripen the grapes, it was a standard practice to go to a warmer region, specifically the Rhone Valley, and bring back wines that were sturdier in alcohol and flavor. And very often this was posted right on the label. It was called Hermitage, after the very famous region Hermitage. Well, this was before, of course, the Appellation d'origine contrôlée, the French wine law. Now you've possibly heard from Marty, our beer expert, about the Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law. And this was a law established in 1516 that said the only thing that can legally be put in beer is water, malt, yeast, and hops. No rodents from the field, nobody's hand that, spuriously landed in the fermenting tank, only those four ingredients. Well, of course, it didn't cover wine. And we know that the great composer, Ludwig van Beethoven, died of lead poisoning. It was...
Oh, Mary, sorry. Hold on one second, Mary, I'm sorry. Can you unmute yourself? I accidentally muted you.
There we go.
So sorry.
Yes, thank you. And it was always assumed that he died of lead poisoning from the lead capsules. Well, now we know that in fact it was a practice to put a red hot lead poker in the fermenting tank, I couldn't actually figure out why, and actually to add certain forms of lead to the wine. And this is what killed, the great composer Ludwig van Beethoven. Well, when I talk about wine laws, the AOC, the DOC, the DOCG, people say, well, what's the point of all these laws? Why do we have to have so many laws? And I joke, well, in America, of course, we don't have these laws. In America, the only laws are pay your taxes and don't poison anyone. Well, this is a little truer than we like to think, because in Austria in 1985, we see the Austrian antifreeze scandal. Austria always was a main supplier of Germany, Austria being a warmer climate. And one particular vintage, in fact, 1985, both countries had very, very bad vintages. And the Austrians said, well, not all Austrians, but a certain group of Austrians said, well, why don't we just add some diethylene glycol to the wine? Now, does anybody know what diethylene glycol is? No, it's an ingredient in antifreeze. Now, if you think that this is so out of the question, I live near a tavern called Simon's, and every year they make glug, and they say limit 2 glugs per person. And one year I said, well, why? Why only 2? They said, because we put antifreeze in it. I don't know if they were kidding, but that's what the bartender told me. We put antifreeze in it. Okay, now antifreeze, 0.1 grams per liter can give you brain and kidney damage. 3 to 5 ounces can be legal. And most of the bottles found in this Austrian antifreeze scandal did contain less than that. But some bottles were found with 48 grams per liter of this DEG in it. You drink a bottle of that and you might as well call your undertaker. Well, not only was that bad, but it turned out that an Austrian official who learned about this contacted his counterpart in Germany, and the counterpart in Germany did nothing. And these wines stayed on the shelf for weeks until that they were finally pulled. Now, the upshot of this, sadly, one of these producers committed suicide, very sad. But also in 1985, Austria established very, very strict laws. And today, Austrian wine is seen as one of the most pristine wine producers in the world. But at the time, it almost killed the Austrian wine industry. The exports went from 45 million gallons in 1984 to 4 million gallons in 1986. Finally, all this wine was pulled from the shelves, and it was used as cooling agents in industry instead of using water. Well, that's an example of what can be added in wine. And today, of course, we have a whole long list of things that can be added to wine. We talk a lot about sulfur dioxide. We have ammonia salts. We have oak adjuncts. We have tartaric acid. We have sugar. We have enzymes. We have other elements that are perfectly natural. But what I think is one of the biggest crimes to modern day wine is a substance called mega purple. Now, mega purple is a grape concentrate, and it uses those grapes that we've talked about, the Tanturier. those grapes that have red flesh, those 14 grapes that have red flesh. And these are concentrated down into this substance called mega purple. And all you need in hundreds of gallons of wine is about a tablespoon of this stuff. And what it does is it props up the flavor. Now, I met with a California winemaker a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, how many producers do you think use mega purple? He was bottling his wines in a communal facility. And he said in that facility, which had very, very reputable wine producers, he estimated 50% of the producers were adding mega purple to their wines. Now, it's not dangerous. It's not illegal, but it's, I think, dishonest. It's all feeding into the Americans' need for sugar, fruit, thick, rich flavors. And unfortunately, this is happening mostly in, Deborah, Pinot Noir. I think, however, Oregon, and especially Willamette, it is against the law, because in Willamette, the labels state that the wine must be 100% of that grape on the label to be called that grape. In California, you only have to say 15, or you can have 14% other, 15% other grapes other than the grape listed on the label. But if you taste a wine and it's kind of thick on the palate, and it's kind of very, very dark, thick, inky in color, and it's extremely fruity, probably there's mega purple in it. And I would hypothesize that includes every bottom shelf of every retailer in the United States of America. So that, I think, is quite a scandal for the American wine industry. But let's move on to our next scandal, which is in the trades today. And I'm calling this Order in the Court. Some of you know that I, behind my name, I put Advanced Sommelier. Well, this is a degree conferred upon me by an organization called the Court of Master Sommeliers and its sister, the Guild of Sommeliers. The Guild and the Court came into the United States in 1989. I sat for the first exam and I achieved the advanced. Well, when the Court came to the United States, their mission was to open up the tent. I mean, you can imagine, I was the only nationally recognized female sommelier in the United States of America. And in all of Chicago, there were only 5, maybe 4 or 5 women in the entire industry. So the court gave me a credential. It gave me something that I could go and I could negotiate for a job. I could negotiate for a salary. It opened doors for me that probably would not have been opened, except that I had that credential. It might be hard for people to understand that the U.S. Department of Labor does not recognize sommelier as a career. Sommelier, if you look in the golly, I don't have written down the exact Department of Government, But if you look in a department of government, I think it's the Statistics Bureau of Labor Standards, there is no word sommelier anywhere in there. But if you look under waiter and waitress, you see busboy, food runner, and wine steward. So according to the US government, a sommelier is a subcategory of waiter and waitress, and still is today. You might not recognize that chef, until 1990, was classified by the US Department of Labor as domestic laborer. And it was only in about 1990 that the position of chef was elevated to the standard that we know it deserves. But the Court of Master Sommelier brought that standard to the United States. Well, let me see. In 2018, we started to hear some rumblings from the court. So every year there are these exams, very, very hard exams, and between 1987 and 1989 and today, the sommelier has risen to the position of rock star in the United States. There's a movie about sommeliers. Sommeliers are earning six-figure salaries. But in 2018, we started to hear rumblings from the court, because that year, an unprecedented number of people passed the exam. 24 people passed the exam. Usually 2 or 3 people pass the exam. This year, 24 people passed the exam. The day after the exam, the board of the Court of Master Sommeliers was contacted from an outside legal counsel reporting that 3 candidates had received an email, heads up, PG, and CDP. Well, in wine speak, PG usually means Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio, and CDP means Chateauneuf de Pape. So at least three of these candidates received an email from someone within the court that these wines were going to be included in the exam. Well, when that hit, the board, the court, sadly, all of those 24 people that had received their exam had their exam revoked from them because they couldn't prove who had received this email and who hadn't. I will say that the court does not reveal the results of any exam. You take the exam, you pass, you fail, and you have no idea where you went wrong. So this is a little bit of non-transparency, and we'll see there's a problem with that. So unfortunately, the upshot of this, there's been no upshot of this. The people that have had their MS, and this is a big deal. This costs a lot of money to take these exams. It's thousands of dollars to fly there. It's thousands of dollars to pay for the wine that you have to taste and practice. It's time, it's stress. And all these 24 people, of all the 24 people who had their degrees revoked, they've all taken the exam again, but only 6 of them have passed. So the upshot of this, no upshot. In fact, nothing has been done about this situation. And to make matters worse, In 2020, we started to hear rumblings, more rumblings from the court. And one day we open up the New York Times and we see that 22 female candidates for the Master Sommelier exam have accused specific Master Sommeliers of sexual harassment, physical abuse, sexual harassment, psychological harassment, physical harassment, and this has been published in the New York Times. I think you've heard of it. Now, today, there are 155 male Master Sommeliers and only 24 female Master Sommeliers. I beg your pardon, 21 of those came forward. So 21 of 24 U.S. Master Sommeliers, females, have complained of sexual harassment. On November 19th of this year, 6 male Master Sommeliers have been expelled from the court. And that includes the founder, the guy who got it all off the ground, the guy who invited me to sit for the exam, possibly the most famous sommelier in the United States, Fred Dame, and he has been expelled, and it's possible that he will lose his position at the winery. Now, there have been a couple of problems with the Master Sommelier in the United States. First of all, as I say, the test results are not revealed. You never know. There's 3 parts to the exam: a written exam, a tasting exam, and a service exam. And no one knows why certain people pass and why certain people fail. Now, this has clearly got to change. There clearly needs to be transparency. The court answers this by saying, we reserve the right to interpret responses. Well, if the interpretation is being biased towards certain people and not towards other people, then that needs to change. Also, something that in my judgment needs to change, when I sat the exam, candidates and Master Sommeliers, it was required that you earn 100% of your living on the floor of a restaurant, which is why I never pursued my master, because I didn't want to stand on the floor of a restaurant for the rest of my life. Well, in about 2000, those rules changed. So you can become a Master Sommelier and never, ever work in a restaurant and go right to a corporate job with a distributor, with an importer, and start to earn six figures. Well, the combination of power and alcohol and money is never a good combination. It's always going to lead to some sort of wrongdoing. So I suggest that the court return to some sort of required restaurant service to remove the lure of that huge amount of money. Also, the court has now established a hotline, in which people can anonymously report any kind of harassment. And of course, if we think that it's only males harassing females, well, that would be a form of sexism in itself.
Mary, I'm sorry. There was a question that came in. Asaf was asking, isn't that going from like one extreme to another with their dramatic change there?
It was kind of a comment. I think you kind of answered it as I was writing it.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. I don't know what was, but I'm glad I answered it. Yes. Also, as I say, we just need to be realistic. You know, myself and the other woman who earned this degree before me, Madeline Trefan, we did it so long ago. We weren't surprised by bad behavior. We expected bad behavior. And so I just feel we have to be realistic. Power, alcohol, and money, not a good combination. Well, also, the court has now established a female at the head of the board. Also, there's a lot of competition that the court has now. They're not the only game in town. But there's been calls now to completely disband the Court of Master Sommeliers. And I'm not for throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The bathwater is dirty, yes. Throw the bathwater out, but keep the baby. If it was easy for people to get along fairly and equitably, we wouldn't be having these conversations today. So clearly it's not easy. And I also suggest that both men and women immediately document any kind of wrongdoing and immediately report any kind of wrongdoing. Well, this is appearing, as I say, yesterday, there was a big article in the Wine Spectator about the future of the court. I myself am not ready to walk away from the court. I think hang on to the baby, throw away the dirty bathwater. Okay. Any questions on that? Is this at all interesting to anybody? Is it? Okay. It's not the fun, wine stuff that I usually talk about. It's some pretty serious stuff. Now, Goliath, let me introduce Samson. Now we're going to talk about Copper Cane versus the Willamette Valley. Okay. The Willamette Valley is a tiny little valley outside of Portland, Oregon. The first fine wine of Willamette Valley and of Oregon was released in 1965, the Eyrie Vineyard Pinot Noir. And in 2017, so from 1965 to 2017, one vineyard, one wine in 1965. In 2017, the Oregon wine industry contributed $6 billion to the United States economy. $1 billion. The work these people have done, especially in the Willamette Valley, is heroic. Unlike California, throughout Oregon, especially Willamette Valley, these are family-owned properties, small family-owned and family-operated properties. And they have worked very, very hard to protect the name, especially Willamette Valley. Once again, people say, well, what's the big deal? Why all the laws? Well, the example I use is the Vidalia onion. The Vidalia onion was trademarked in 1992. And since then, at this point, they now contribute $5 million to the state and $100 million to the United States economy. So just the trademarking of that name, Vidalia, was a very important economic act. For instance, another example, we all think about Florida oranges and Michigan cherries. Well, what would you think about a Michigan orange and a Florida cherry? You probably wouldn't buy these things. And so the concept that the land is the brand is a very important concept for all agriculture and especially for wine. When I talk about the wine laws, I always stress the law doesn't talk about quality. It doesn't talk about whether people are going to like the wine or not. These laws are designed to guarantee authenticity. So what it says on the label is actually what you're getting. Now, Oregon has done very, very well at this. Shoot, and I wanted to print this part out. I guess it didn't come up. Just in July, the European Union has awarded the Willamette Valley with the right to be known as the Willamette Valley, with the right to say, yes, the Willamette Valley is a specific place on earth that produces a specific style of wine. So these producers have worked tirelessly to protect their name. Well, let me see. So comes 2018, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Bernau, who's the owner of the Willamette Valley Vineyards, he was one of the first people there, so he grabbed the name, Willamette Valley Vineyards. He was contacted by his lawyer, who informed him of copyright infringement. It seems that a California company called Copper Cane, which is owned by a family, the Wagner family, who produces Caymus, Meiomi, and other major brands, released a wine labeled the Willamette Journal. The Willamette Journal. And the label talked about, the coastal breezes of Oregon and the small producers of Oregon. And of course, Jim Bernau, owner of the Willamette Valley Vineyards, contacted Joe Wagner, president of Copper Cane, and said, what's going on? Well, first of all, it was determined that the Willamette certainly doesn't have 100% Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, and possibly not even 100% Oregon wine, which is completely against the Oregon state wine laws. Also, the wine was not produced in Oregon. Whatever grapes were grown in Oregon were put on dry ice and trucked to California, which is certainly going to damage their quality. Well, Jim Bernau sued Copper Cane along with the Oregon Wine Industry Board, and Joe Wagner, big, huge, powerful company, countersued to say that the Willamette Valley Vineyards had no right to claim a copyright, that the Willamette Journal was a perfectly suitable name. They weren't misleading, the consumer at all. And so Wagner countersued. Well, I'm so sorry. The final page of my notes did not print out, but just about a month ago, a judge determined that the Wagner suit was invalid, that the Willamette Journal label was misleading customers into thinking that, in fact, it was 100% Willamette Valley fruit, which is the law in Willamette Valley.
So, Mary, why would the grapes be transported to California for the production?
because he's got a big winery in California.
Just because of the being able to manage the volume and stuff. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. And along with that judge ruling, all the Willamette Journal wines were to be pulled from the state. And also, Copper Cane was ordered not to sell any wine in Oregon. Well, sadly, that hasn't happened. The Willamette Valley Journal label has been discontinued, but it is still appearing on shelves. I contacted the Oregon Wine Commission to find out the status of that. But in addition to the Willamette Journal, there is another wine called Elouan that also suggests that the wine is made from 100% Oregon fruit. And it is not made from 100% Oregon fruit. Once again, the Oregon wine growers have sued Copper Cane. Once again, the courts have said, yes, this suit is valid. You can continue this suit. However, as I say, I think you can still find bottles of Elouan. Possibly you can still, Deborah Bosco, do you own a bottle of Elouan? Good.
I do not.
All right. Well,
But
that's good.
can I just say this? My cat is sleeping right next to the computer as you're talking. And it's the sweetest picture. I sent it to Duke. Maybe she can share it.
Oh,
it's-
isn't that
It's
nice?
pretty adorable. So
Are you slipping him a little Pinot Noir, Deborah? No.
I should.
So now, you might say, well, what does it matter? What does it matter? They're bringing more attention to the Willamette Valley. They're bringing more attention to Oregon. Well, what it matters is money. What it matters is that in the last 10 years, 3 prestigious Burgundy producers, Domaine Drouin, although Drouin is probably more like 15 years, Domaine Drouin, Louis Jadot, and I'm sorry, my brain isn't working, a third very prominent Burgundian producers have invested in the tiny, tiny little Willamette Valley, a place when I opened a restaurant in the Willamette Valley, the only place you could go out, there was no place to sleep, and the only place you could go out for dinner was a little diner in McMinnville. That was the only place. Now, hotels, resorts, beautiful properties, and millions of dollars of foreign, I won't say millions, I'm going to use the B word, I'm going to say billions of dollars of foreign investment in this tiny little region. And that's what the Willamette producers have fought for, and that's what they're protecting. So, I don't know. Was it at all interesting? Yeah?
yes.
Well, you don't read the wine trades like I read the wine trades, but I'm telling you, like I said, the Spectator had an article about the wine, the Master Sommelier yesterday, which I responded to in a Facebook post. And the Willamette Valley situation is still playing out because the final court date has not been decided. Okay. We got any questions?
Any questions at all? Let's see, people are saying that we rely on you to tell us everything that's going on in the wine world. And then someone was talking about how their favorite are Argentine and Chilean wines. They were in Costco watching someone select and recommended to go with Chilean. They'll never go wrong. So it's nice. We love hearing everyone's thoughts and opinions on different wines. So thank you for sharing, folks. Anyone have any questions on any of the scandals that Mary talked about today? No.
Well, it's interesting about the antifreeze. Oh my God, because I know that people say like I've never heard any of this. So I know that like when you have it in your garage, keep it away from your dog because it's fatal if it's ingested. So I had no idea about that. That was very interesting.
And it almost killed the industry. But today, Austria is a prime proponent of what's called biodynamic farming, which is the nth, the top level of organic. So today, the Oregon industry is pristine. So that has been a very positive upshot.
Do they have reds too? Are there? I know it sounds silly, but
Austria does have wonderful reds, and they're grapes that you would recognize. For instance, Pinot Noir. I'm sorry, I'm not taking an exam tomorrow, or I would know. They've got a beautiful interpretation of Pinot Noir. They've got a beautiful interpretation of Gamay, but Colette, they're made in such small quantities that they never make it here.
wow. Okay.
So you got to go to Austria to drink them.
Okay. But you can get whites here. Can you get whites here then?
Yes, there are two
Oh,
types.
right.
There's a wonderful, basically the two whites are Riesling, and the Rieslings are really beautiful because they're drier than their German counterparts. At one of my properties, the chopping block, I use a wine called Schloss Gobelsberg, and it's a beautiful wine. I think you can get it at Binny's or something for, $22. Not cheap. These wines are not cheap. Schloss Gobelsberg.
Okay. I'm gonna try it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful wine. Also, their signature grape is called Grüne Veltliner. Gruner Veltliner. Grüne Veltliner. And that's just a fun knockback drink.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Mary, what do you think there's going to be, okay, with everything that's happened with the fires on the West Coast and the droughts, what do you think is going to be the next scandal coming? Like,
Well, something, again, in the courts, these wineries, when they went back to their insurance companies,
That's what I was going to ask about. Yeah.
the insurance company said, that's not covered. Fire isn't covered. And the state, the California state, actually had to force the insurance companies to pay up. I mean, you can imagine your own home. What if you could? Oh, and then the insurance company said, no, not only are we not going to pay, we're not going to insure you anymore. And so all these wineries couldn't get insured. You can imagine your own home. What would you do if you couldn't get fire insurance? So the state of California actually has ordered the insurance companies, first of all, to pay up, and second of all, that they started a commission that absolutely would insure winery properties. Now, this isn't the grapes. This is just the winery properties. And there's all sorts of suits going on, people receiving tainted grapes. Oh, you didn't tell me these were tainted grapes. And then the wine is made and the wine tastes like an ashtray. And so the producer is suing the grower. It's a mess. It is a it is a mess what's going on in California now with the lawsuits.
Yeah. So, well, I'll have to stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Cross our fingers. Enjoy wine we have now too.
I will say that news from Oregon has come out, and 2020, the 2021 vintage is, they're calling it, they're ecstatic about the vintage. It's a very, very good vintage, 2021 in the Willamette. Yeah.
Fantastic. My husband has a trip planned for that in February. Talk to me if you want to get orders in. Anyway, so thank you everyone for joining us today. This was quite an exciting topic. It's very, very interesting taste talk. I know we have some new people with us here today. Thank you for joining us. We would love if you have any kind of food, beverage, culinary, hospitality topics that you might be interested in hearing about on wine, on beer. Please send them to taste@nl.edu. We're always excited to hear what you want to learn about. And if we have someone who can definitely talk to that, we will definitely see what we can make happen. Tomorrow, very, very excited, Shruti Swaminathan is going to be demonstrating a truffle butter mushroom pasta. Sounds delightful, a little bit delectable, perfect for the season. It is definitely pasta eating time. So please join us for that tomorrow at 4:30. The email will go out. It was with a reminder and with the Zoom link so you can easily find us. I did send the recipe for that earlier today already. So if you want to get the ingredients and cook along, you can, or you can just watch her make it happen and make it for yourself this weekend. So thank you, everyone. Hope to see you again, possibly tomorrow, and have a great evening. Thank you so much, Mary.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.